My name is Jose Munguia. I was born in Morelos, Mexico. So in Mexico, I currently do remote work for a property management company located in Wyoming. I was taken to the U.S. by my parents at 3 years old. My parents wanted a different lifestyle for me, a better lifestyle for me, to which they decided to immigrate to the United States with myself at 3 years old. A better life, a um, better opportunity for me to grow and for the family. To the end, the way I entered, the way I was told that we entered was through crossing the river into San Diego from Tijuana. Um, it was just different to what I was living, different to what I had seen. When I was in the U.S., I worked several different jobs. I did construction. I ran fiber optic cable for a subcontractor company. Um, Worked at nightclubs. Ultimately, when I became a DACA recipient, I worked for um, a Toyota dealership and a radio station. I returned to Mexico in April of 2018. Throughout my time before I became a DACA recipient and obtained a legal license to drive, I drove to work and I drove pretty much anywhere that I needed to do. And throughout that time, I racked up several different no license charges, and ultimately, one of those incidents became a DUI, and that DUI led to my arrest and proceedings through the legal to the immigration legal system due to the loss of my the DACA and being incarcerated for about a year through the process until ultimately I was granted self deportation. I think I did, but part of me did not take that dream to the full extent. So returning to Mexico was, I'm not gonna say shock because I've seen pictures and videos on social media, and being able to see it firsthand kind of left me in wonder and awe of the fact that I was truly here, that I never expected to come back in the way that I did, but I was in awe and just wowed by everybody, my surroundings. Some of the challenges that I faced coming back to Mexico were being different. Although I looked and I might have walked the same way the people here walk, I spoke differently simply because my Spanish had an accent, and just being judged because even though I was born here, I wasn't from here. I have tried to adapt as best possible. However, I still feel that there are parts of me that don't want to adapt to the lifestyle in Mexico. They they still miss the U.S. and the way I did things for several different years. One of the main things that I've had to adapt to over the years has been work. Work has been different. Work has been finding it. But because I speak English, I'm able to find good jobs. However, some of those good jobs aren't as good as they say they are. And also the food. The food is different. The food is a little bit more natural, less processed. Some of the foods that I'm accustomed in the States, they're not here, so they're difficult to find. Saying I want to go grab pizza doesn't necessarily mean Domino's and Pizza Hut. It's more like your local mom and pop's pizza spot, but the ingredients are different. Um, Transportation. There's buses and vans that you pay and take you everywhere. Owning a car in Mexico is different. So definitely have to accustom to driving a later model car, or if you drive, the laws here are not as applicable as the laws of the States. People do a lot of the things that they want to do, even when they drive. The parties are different. You have people that play music. Your neighbors can play music till 7, 6 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning the next day. And you just kind of got to deal with it. Can't call the police because the police ain't going to do anything about it. I think a lot of the stuff that I've had to adapt to have caused strain on me. Simply because trying to adapt, trying to learn how to redo things, how to do things differently here. Day to day here is different. Doing laundry here is different. Going to go buy groceries here is different. Just going to the market versus going to a supermarket is different. Because I go to the market, I'm not going to find ketchup to, put on some French fries, some homemade French fries, and buying foods that I'm accustomed to, foods that in the States I'm accustomed to. You go to the market here, and there's fresh produce, there's produce that's different, that's new, that I've never seen before, and having to ask, and the local people look at you like, what, don't you know what this is? So the judging still happens. My mom always says, this is what I was afraid of, because you're neither from there nor from here. In Spanish they say ni de aquí ni de allá. So it's different because people just look at you different. They look at you different. And especially in the rural part that I live, people don't know what family, everybody's family tight, and they know who's who. So when they see somebody different, they're like, who's that? And they start pointing and looking at you different because you are different. Returning to the U.S., per my attorneys, is a possibility. Um, when I first got here, my mother would ask me what I wanted to do if I wanted to return to the States the day I could and I was able to. At that particular moment when she asked me, I always would tell her, you know what, Mom, let's cross that bridge when we get there. Over the years, over the time, especially now that I'm very into watching the news, especially in the States, and seeing everything that's going on with the new administration, how they are just rounding up people and how they're handling the situations and just treating the immigrant community. It says outrage. It breaks my heart. And my mom asked me that same question again. And I said, you know what, Mom? I would go visit and spend some time there, but I think ultimately I would rather live here. I have been able to rebuild stability to a certain extent because being having lived in the States for so long, you're accustomed to different things, accustomed to things that here are more expensive. Here, they're little bit different or harder to find, not necessarily different, but harder to find. And when you do find those things, since people know you want those things, they exaggerate on the price, they overcharge you. There are things that you can't find. So that sense of stability, it's there to a certain extent, not the extent that I wish it was there. I think that the greatest challenge that I've had to adapt to is just being here. Being here. Although it might be my birth country, it's not home. I have not tried to return to the U.S. I have told myself that the day that I go back to the U.S., I want to do it the legal way. I want to be able to go back, and if I want to come back to Mexico, I can come back to Mexico and go back to the U.S. without any repercussions. What I miss most of the U.S. is my family, my friends. Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype because you you don't know what it's like unless you've been in the shoes of the person. The year that I spent away from my family, it might not have been hell, but being in places that you wouldn't wish anybody to be in. My name is Jose Munguia, and I was born in Morelos, Mexico. I went to the U.S. at the age of 3 when my parents decided to immigrate. In the U.S., I worked in several different jobs. I did construction. My dad had a roofing company and helped him with that. I had a job doing uh, running fiber optic cable, subcontractor from AT&T and T and Comcast and Spectrum, as well as a nightclub job. Ultimately, when I became a DACA recipient, I was able to work for a Toyota dealership and a radio station. I entered the U.S. crossing the river from Tijuana into San Diego. I don't remember the journey exactly. However, my parents say that when we were crossing, there was a helicopter that was above them, and me as a 3-year-old boy, I was interested and wanted to see the helicopter, but my dad kept trying to cover us so that we weren't found. In the U.S., when we first immigrated, we lived in California, and ultimately, after one of my mom's sisters who lived in Georgia told her, "Hey, it's booming here. There's a lot of work. Come." My dad left first, and 6 months later, we followed suit. I think one of the hardest things has just been being away from my family, being away from what I was accustomed for so long, and then having to come back to a place that I was born in. However, not knowing anything, not knowing the culture, not knowing the people, seeing family that I hadn't seen in years, and having to readapt to a new country.
My name is Socorro Robles and I am from Matamoros, Tamaulipas, Mexico. Well, I grew up by myself. I am the fourth person who born from my mama. I grew up in Zacatecas, Fresnillo, Zacatecas, since I was one to I was until I was 14. And then we moved to Guadalajara, and I went to school in Guadalajara, and then until I was 17, and then I moved to USA. I lived in US for 41 years between Orange County and LA County. What I liked more, it was the comfort, and it was a challenge for me to learn English, to drive, and to one of my main goals was to put money together to buy a property for my future. I reached my goal by savings, and it took me years, but I did it. The reason that I returned to Mexico again is my mother, to take care of her. She's 91. She was 91 when I moved back to Mexico. And she's 93, 94. She's going to be 94, and I'm taking care of her. When I arrived to Mexico, I was surprised and excited. There is a huge difference between USA and Mexico. The differences are the money, the everyday life. Everything I do in Mexico is totally different from USA. Food, people, streets, cities, you name it. A big difference. Some of the challenges that I had to go through water, for example, we don't have running water. We have to buy in a pipe and then get it to the kitchen any way we need to do it. Or to take a bath, you have to do it with little coquita, they call it. And we don't have showers. We have to put water in our head in order to take a shower. And food also. The first year we don't have refrigerator, so we have to buy everyday food from the store because no fresh. And also no pavement. The streets are just dirt. It's like if you shower in the morning, you have to shower at night time too before bed because your hair is so dirty and everything is so dusty. It's funny, but that's what it is. Where I live, we live in a house very poor. We don't have the money to live near to the city, so we were suffer a lot. But I was with my mother, and that was worth it. For her, anything. It was very difficult to adapt myself because going to Ralph's for shopping, for grocery shopping, versus Mexico, I go to the swap meet. And then at the beginning I was priced for every single little thing, the chile, tomatoes, the potatoes, carrots, everything. I had to ask the prices because no prices in it. So you had to ask in order to choose how much you want and how much you want to spend. It was very difficult also. They had water running in the kitchen to wash the dishes. It was beautiful in USA, but in Mexico we had to warm up the water to wash dishes with grease. And it takes longer. And gas, we burn more gas in order to do that. But we have to do it, especially in very, very cold days. You cannot wash the greasy dishes with cold water. You have to warm up water to wash them. And another thing it was very difficult to adapt, it was the money. I didn't know how to deal with Mexican money and with American money, and very often people look at me like I didn't know how to change value of the money. And what they said is like they try to raise the prices because they don't know, I don't know how to deal with it. So I did a little thing that I want to comment on. I went home and I got a page and I write down $1, how many pesos, $2, how many pesos. So I got the pretty much idea how much it would cost in one item. And I will compare all the time. When it was time to go shopping for myself, clothes, it was difficult. In a swap meet, I will pay $7 to $10 for one pants, nice jeans. And in USA I paid $60. So it was big difference. But I adjust myself. I learn how, and everything thanks to my mama because otherwise I won't be here. It was a big change. And another thing also, it was my skin started to be dry and wrinkles because of the cold weather, the dirt, the water's different quality. And I started buying a cream for my face that I used to pay $60 for a little jar, and I don't have that money because I used to make, what, 60, 70, 80 to 90,000 a year. And I can adjust myself to 1,000 a month. 12,000 a year compared to 80 is a big difference. And I learned to, it was very difficult to adjust that issue. But I learned, and everything thanks to my mama. Now I can, if someone invite me to USA, I can go and feel comfortable, come home and feel comfortable too because I know how to deal with everything. Yes, I think I achieved, I adapt myself to Mexico. I feel proud of myself and people who's around me. They're being very understanding, but I feel comfortable. And I told my daughters, I did it and you guys can do it too. Well, I have the experience that I've been learning here. One of the things I told them not to speak English because some people, they don't know. They think we are talking about them because they don't have any idea. So this is to tell people around me here in Mexico to feel comfortable with me, not because I speak English. They will think I'm talking about them. So I always told other people, don't speak English in front of people, Hispanic people. They say no, they don't speak English, so they don't feel awkward. And I always can tell them, you can count on me. Any questions, any advice, if I can do it, I will give it to you so you can feel comfortable being in Mexico. Here, my address, close to my address, we are like 20 families that came from USA, starting to live in this Ensenada Street. And we kind of look at each other and we say hi, that's all we say, and then we start talking in Spanish. But when we say hi, we identify that we come from USA to live in Mexico. And we are like 20 families, total families in this Ensenada Street. We are like 45 people. Almost half of it, they come from USA. And I feel good that I can, if you have a problem, big problem, I can talk to them and we help each other all the time. But I can advise them in every single way how to sell a car, how to buy a car from Mexico, and where to go shopping. We have a Costco, and we have all the stores, Smart and Fine, and if you're close to USA, we go to one of those stores. But most of the time we go to Mexican store because it's less expensive. That helps. My perspective in life is changed. In USA wasn't very Catholic, I will say. I didn't went to church many times. Like in Mexico, I back to my church, and some people and I would go to a group of families to enjoy the experience. And I noticed that in Mexico, a lot of families go to church together. And every weekend, I see them at church. And that makes me feel very comfortable, very Mexican, very Catholic. And it makes me feel like I'm so lucky person to be able to go to USA and live as a USA citizen and come to Mexico and live as a Mexican. So I feel like I'm very fortunate. At the beginning it was difficult when I traveled back to USA. For whatever reason I need to go. Crossing the line from Tijuana to San Isidro, it takes me 3 hours sitting on the car, bump to bump. So 3 hours sitting on the car is difficult, especially now. But always with Mexican music in the car, so we can sing and buy a popsicle and buy a torta or buy a soda, whatever you want. They sell everything before you cross the line. This was a challenge. It was difficult, a lot of time consuming. But at the end, I choose to do it. It was my goal to go and do whatever I need to do there and come back. To come back to Mexico is the same story, bumper to bumper, especially Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Monday to Thursday is less time, both ways. But my experience has been worth it. Everything I do, I feel so proud of myself because I have the opportunity, God gave me the opportunity to do it in both countries. And it's difficult to talk English and then Spanish, and then have dollars and then pesos. Have people who like to go to Disneyland and places like that, and then have people to go to the movies. That's it. According to my knowledge, I have a little, what did I say, respect or to places where you can go here. I don't really enjoy it because I don't have friends here, just my mom 24/7. But I'm happy. I'm happy here with my mother.